We are officially kicking off now with Startup Grind Wilmington. This is our April 2020 edition. We have Markevis Gideon, the founder of NERDiT NOW. So Startup Grind is a program to highlight the founders in Wilmington that are doing cool things, pushing forward their mission and innovating in their space. And Markevis has very much been doing that. He started his business about just coming up on 5 years this fall. And it started in his apartment and then expanded into a storefront and then Shark Tank, and we'll get through all of that right now. But the famous story that you tell often is that you got your first computer in high school and it changed your life. So how did that really change your life, and what did you mean by that? And then when did you start thinking of like, I could do this for other people and help them?
All right, so in short, when people see NERDiT NOW today, what they see is like Shark Tank. Wow, this small company has made it to Shark Tank. But what people don't realize is that this all started when I was 12 years old, when one teacher donated a laptop to me. Now, talking about my background, I grew up in an underserved community to parents who lived it, like they were underserved, they didn't graduate high school, and it was just like the trajectory of my life didn't look too well. And I finally moved out of Wilmington to Claymont, Delaware, and one teacher said, nope, here's a computer. And instead of doing my homework or playing video games, I took it apart, put it together, took it apart, put it together, took it apart, put it together, and then they said, actually go back to Wilmington. There's this good high school, and my parents were like, no, we just moved out of that area. Went back to Wilmington, and that's where I went to Howard High School of Technology. By the age of 17, I was a Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer. That one laptop got me to a very good space in my life, which led me to go work at MBNA for a year and a half. And I started to think like I can do this. I started my first computer company, Connect You Computer Services, at 17 years old. Wow. Did that for about 5 years. Went to college where I studied accounting and computer science, graduated with 2 degrees, had different various businesses there, and went over to China for 5 years, which we could talk about a little bit later. Yeah. But when I came back, it was like my same community still in need of this technology, and we were trying to figure out how to close that digital divide.
So you graduated from Howard Tech, and then you went right into college, or was there a little gap there?
I went immediately right after college, or high school. I went straight to college, Widener University up in Chester, Pennsylvania, which in my mind, I guess young and dumb, I told myself, that is a customer right now.
So Widener University, and then?
I wanted to go straight to Widener University because I thought to myself, I want to go to a college that's further away from home. And living in Claymont, I didn't realize that Widener was only 15 minutes away, where University of Delaware was 45 minutes away. It made no sense, but I went to Widener, and it was probably one of the best decisions I ever made in my life.
Absolutely. And were you a college entrepreneur as well? Did you try to start a few businesses there?
My first entrepreneurial venture in college, I remember sitting outside the bookstore. And people are like, well, why are you here? And I look at you and say, Jono, you know what? Walk into the bookstore and ask them how much they'll pay for the book that you're about to sell to them. And I'll give you $10 more than that. You're like, okay. And after a while, I'll collect hundreds of books. And I'll just store them over the summertime. And then the very next semester, I'll sell that same book. Go ahead, look for your book. I'll sell it to you $35 to $50 cheaper than a bookstore would. And I would make like $50 to $100 each book. It was like too easy.
Brilliant.
Started that, and then I remember my car broke down my sophomore year in college. I had about $5,000 cash, so I went to an auction down in Wilmington. It was actually at a Goodwill auction, and bought a 1995 Mercedes. I was like, oh, this is fancy. I like it. And as I'm driving home, I go to the gas station, and which was a neighbor of mine, and he said, hey, you selling cars now? He always knew I was an entrepreneur. I said, maybe. He said, I have a 99 Honda Accord with a bad transmission. I give it to you for $300. So, oh. Paid $2,500 for the Mercedes, $300 for the Honda, paid another $800 to fix the transmission, and sold both cars for over $15,000.
Wow.
3 months after that, I had 30 cars on my college campus at one time. It was crazy.
Oh my goodness. And then you probably had to think about like the parking fees for those at the college. Did the college get mad about that, of you having 30 cars just taking up space in the lot?
Well, in the beginning, they actually didn't know about it. I just used a parking lot that most people didn't use. And I really shouldn't say this live, but I guess like I would get parking passes from individuals that worked at the financial aid office and park it all in one parking lot. I remember one day, this gentleman comes in, taller white guy, suited up, and he's like, "Hey, I'm looking for a car." It's like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "Where's the cars?" I say, "Well, all of these." He's like, "Wow, your university allows you to do this?" Like, "Well, you know, it's supporting students who need scholarships. Every car sold will go directly to a scholarship fund for a student in need." And he's like, "All right, cool. I'm gonna show these pictures to my kids and I'll contact you tomorrow." Gave me his business card and young and dumb, I didn't look at it. Well, then that night, I get home, I start counting my money. I'm like, yeah, made some money, sold some cars, and yep, gonna contact this. Oh no, the president of the university.
Oh.
Bad day.
Bad day.
The next day, I called I sent an email. They scheduled me to have a meeting, and he said, if you stop working 40 hours a week at Geek Squad, and you stop selling cars, and I'll let you run your small computer company. Because he realized that I was not doing it because I just wanted to make money, but I didn't have financial aid that would cover all my tuition. And every semester I had to pay $15,000 out of pocket. So I was just selling as much as I could, working as much as I could to keep my parents from out of debt. And he said, if you get rid of all of that, your next 2 years are on me.
Wow.
It's like, oh.
That's very generous.
Cars, gone. Geek Squad, gone. Still ran Connect You for a little bit longer, but after a while that was gone too, for I didn't have the need to work as hard. And my GPA immediately went from a 2.1 to a 3.8.
Wow.
Because I could actually go to class now. It was like a beautiful day.
Actually go to class and actually study and actually really be a student and learn, which is the point of going to college.
Correct.
So did you find that college helped you as an entrepreneur and like taking in those skills?
Yeah, so when people look at me today, they're like, oh, you must have learned it all in college. Computer science, well, computer science is programming.
Yeah.
I learned most of the skill that I have today at my Votech High School. But what college did for me was help diversify me as an individual. This conversation is so much easier for me because I was no longer surrounded by just minorities.
Yeah.
It was like a bigger pool of individuals. But the one event that completely changed everything for me was when I applied for a 1-month study abroad program to visit Chongqing, China. And I remember one day I'm living with 4 females at the time. I sleep on the sofa couch, and they say, as long as you pay for food, you can stay here for free. It's like, okay.
Yay.
I'm sleeping there, and one day I wake up, and they're all around the table diligently working. I'm like, what are y'all doing? They're like, oh, we're planning to go to China. I was like, you're stupid. And I lay back down. But then I thought, well, some of their friends are applying too, and they're pretty. I was like, you know what? I'm going to apply too. Problem was the deadline was the very next day. We had to write an essay. We had to get some referrals and recommendations. And they were like, you also need I think it was a 3.0 GPA. At the time, I had a 2.1. But what they said, Markevis, it won't work. But what they didn't realize is that one of my recommendation letters were going to come from the president of the university, the president of enrollment services, and then also the person in charge of the whole program. Needless to say, I was accepted into the program. And if nothing else, I learned accounting skills to give me a good gist of handling the financials here at NERDiT NOW. I do know programming, so as we're talking about different programs with our kiosk, I can understand what's going on, and that all comes from Widener University. But then going to China gave me the courage, and that only came from Widener University, which I'm so forever grateful for.
Excellent. And so you went to China for that month, or for that short trip, and then you ended up going back for about 5 years, is that correct?
I went there for the 1 month, and I came back, and I said to myself, one day I'm gonna go back, one day. I came back, and I knew that I had 1 year left in college, but at that point I decided to take on 2 degrees, and I was a whole year behind. So that semester, there was 4 different kind of semesters. There was the beginning, the end, one that kind of does the middle, and then an online semester.
Yeah.
And I did over 15 credits in each semester for that summer. And then I did 23 credits plus the following 2 semesters so I could graduate on time. Graduated on time, and I got a really good job just 2 years after the real estate bubble. Boom, 2008, it was like nobody could get jobs. Well, in 2010, I got a job making $65,000 a year, got a new car, new job. It was just beautiful. And I gave a TEDx talk about that, how I found my China for, honestly, it was just a really bad day that led me back to China. I probably wouldn't have went back, but one day I'm driving to work, my car breaks down. And after my car broke down, I'm walking to work, my girlfriend calls me and say, actually, I'm moving into North Carolina. It's go over. I'm like, huh, okay. And me being flustered, I towed the car from the location to my job. Get to my job, and they laid off 3 people. Me being one of the last 3 people hired, got laid off. So I go back into my car, I try to start it, it's still overheated. I'm like, you know what, this sucks. I need to go away. And China it was.
Okay. Yeah, that's a very bad day in any world. So then you make the decision, you cut ties, and then you go back to China, and you end up staying there for 5 years. So what did you do in that time?
So my initial intent was to stay in China for 4 months.
4 months.
I was like, 4 months, I'll go there, I'll come back, I'll find another job, it'll be great. And the first month was great, honestly. I guess it was just like, wow, I'm in a new place. I like this right now. But then month 2 and 3 came, and it was like, I don't know the language. I don't have many friends. My family all back home. My brother just had a son. It was like, this kind of sucks. But then I learned one important sentence. And that sentence is, 我要吃麦乐鸡和番茄酱, which means I want chicken nuggets and ketchup. When I figured out how to say that, my world changed. 8 months later, I could make a friend where we could sit here and talk like this within a bar environment, in a workplace environment. It was fine. After a year and a half, leave me anywhere in China, I was completely fine on my own. So it was a good time.
And what did you do for the 5 years after?
So my first year, I studied at a university. Well, when I say studied, I lived at the university until I got kicked off of the campus. They said, Markevis, you don't go to class, and you're barely around. And we had maybe a 15-minute conversation all in Mandarin. And then I responded at the end of the meeting. I said, well, we're talking in Mandarin right now about how I don't go to class. But if you go to any of my other 13 classmates, not one of them could understand what you just said. I'm studying just in a different way. Now, where my classmates could read and write, I couldn't do that at all. Like, 一点都看不懂, which means I can't read at all. But when you want me to speak, my speaking was pretty well. So they were like, oh, well, you still got to leave, but that's kind of impressive. And as I got kicked off campus, I ended up finding another job teaching children. And then I quickly realized how much I hate other people's children. I mean, like, I hate other people's children. And I decided to leave there after about a year, and I start working at a university. And while working at the university, at this point, it's 2 years into China, and my Mandarin skills are getting really good. Like, they're improving so fast. And I'm teaching accounting, computer science, but all in all, it's really just teaching English to college students. And one of the teachers realized how good my Chinese was and how much of a connection I had with both the Chinese students as well as foreigners that would come visit the university. And she said, my husband owns an import-export company. I think that you'll be a good person to work here. It's like, okay, sure, why not? I could travel for free. Let's do it. And as I'm working there, I started traveling around Asia, and it was like pretty cool. And then I met one guy, his name was Tim Taylor. And he comes to me and says, Markevis, let's open up a bar together. And I remember, like, at first, like, I was like, yeah, I'm working in bars, I'm doing a lot of karaoke. Like, I remember at one point, I had an audience of about 30,000 people at this big festival as I'm rapping some ludicrous song, which was crazy. But he was like, hey, bro, let's do this together. So we end up opening up a bar after a while, and we decided to open up in a location that we were meeting at inside of a hotel. Now, it was a Holiday Inn, but a Holiday Inn there is like a 5-star hotel versus where it is here. And within 4 months, we had 12 waitresses, 3 bartenders, and a bar manager. The bar was thriving. So I was working at an import-export company, teaching at a university to maintain my visa status, all the while opening up a bar. It was just like great. And I guess 3 months in the summer, I'll travel to America. 3 months in the winter, travel away from China and America, and go like Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, Japan, wherever, like just traveled. Had a good time.
Awesome. And then how long did you stay on that before you decided to return home, like permanently?
So, you know, the girl made me go to China. It was another girl who brought me back from China. When I was 16 years old, I started dating this girl, this one special lady. Her name's Kristen Baptiste at the time. And we started dating when we were younger, and we had to break up due to, like, her parents said, yeah, y'all can't date anymore. And when I went to China, I remember my best friend, Jonathan Hotster. He was living with me for about 4 or 6 months, and he said, let's take a walk this one night. It's maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, and we're just walking around, and it was normal for us. We just walked at nighttime because he was still jet lagged, so it was like fine for us. And one day he asked me randomly, if you could date any girl again, who would you date again? And I said, Kristen. And he said a girl's name. We went back to the apartment. Jake is stupid. And then we decided to the conversation did it after that. We didn't talk much more about it. But the very next day, whenever I would travel back to America, because this was late November, early December, I would tell people, hey, I work for an import-export company. If you need some items from China, let me know and I'll bring it for you. And one message came from someone that said, Chris B. Now, I thought it was Chris, a guy I went to high school with. And I looked at it, I was like, I'll respond later. But then I was like, man, gotta grind right now, homie, grind. So I opened up my laptop thinking, yeah, let's get this $200-300. And I realized, oh, it's actually Kristen, the girl I mentioned yesterday. I was her first boyfriend like 7 years ago. We didn't communicate within the 7 years or nothing of the sort, but because of that one thing, it was like God telling me in that moment, fits it, just fits it.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks later, I came back to America. I was supposed to stay for only 2 weeks and visit the other parts of Asia, to go to the beaches and stuff.
Right.
I ended up staying for almost 3 months. And it was like, okay, no, this is done. Like, all right, I have to go back to China because I still have things to fix. Like, I was still working at the university. I still had my bar. I had an apartment. It was like, we got to fix things now. Let me go back. And if you're still here in 7 months, you're mine. 5 years later, man, we got a 1-year-old son and we're happily married.
So you settled all your affairs, you moved back, and then when did NERDiT NOW start?
So when I moved back to America, initially I started off and kind of just did nothing. I traveled to Canada, went out to California. I just did a whole bunch of nothing for a few months and then realized like I'm depleting a lot of my funds. And it wasn't just me traveling or having fun, but when I came back, I realized that that same community had this technological divide. So during the 7 months before I moved back, I purchased maybe $15,000 worth of computers, and I started donating a lot of it. I said, yep, 100 computers each year. And when I moved back, I was still operating off the fact that I had a bar, import-export company, job, paying, like, I had a 4-bedroom apartment with 2 bathrooms and 2 balconies and 3 bathrooms in China for $300 a month. I was living well. I was like very, very good. And when I came back, I was still operating as if I still had those funds coming in. And I'm donating computers out there, and I realized this is not sustainable. And I kind of leaned in on what everybody thought was acceptable in America, and I actually started searching for a job. I searched for a few months, and then I landed a job at a local financial institution. I worked there for maybe, actually no, I got one job first at one financial institution as a project manager for IT support. They had 2 or 3 buildings, and we completely changed all their computers out. And that was pretty good. then afterwards, it was like, well, this contract's going to end eventually. And another financial institution said, hey, we have more money for you. Will you come here? But I went from doing computer work to now being not really a program manager, a business analyst, if you will. I started working there, and I did that for about 3 months, and I was miserable. I mean, like, miserable. I knew that I hated working for other people. And the first role that I got when I returned, I was like a manager, and I didn't have anyone telling me what to do. I kind of just like managed the project. Here, I had to be here at a certain time, at a certain day, doing a certain thing, hitting certain metrics, which things I still do today, but it wasn't someone telling me that I had to do it to make their pockets bigger.
Right.
So you're pushing me so hard. I get the same pay, but your pockets are getting bigger, not mine. And I remember just being so upset. And then at this time, I'm now dating Kristen again. And she said, you know what? Let's go visit China. I was like, okay. So in 2016, right after we won, I guess it was second place for the University of Delaware's Horn program, which was, it was just so much, because I guess right before I quit, I started thinking like, nope, I'm gonna jump back in this entrepreneurial run. I don't know what I'm gonna do yet. And Jonathan said, you're an entrepreneur, let's start a computer business again. So he made the application out, and we applied to Horn. And right then they said, okay, you're accepted, but you gotta do a pitch. And at that point, I was at Dell Tech with Dave Kaufman doing David Hall for the Kaufman program, doing my first entrepreneurial class that I ever taken before. And that class at Dell Tech was so good for me. I don't think if I didn't do that class, I would have never made it very far in the Horn program. But it was like Dell Tech, then University of Delaware's Horn program, got us a decent amount of money. And then my wife said, look, you got this momentum, let's go visit China. And let's see what you really want to do. I was still looking for a job after all this happened. We went to China for maybe 3 weeks. Her first time, when she thought I would hate this, she loved it. I remember the day before we came back, she's like, can we extend our trip? But we visited the Great Wall, we visited old friends, old entrepreneurial friends, other project managers for large companies. And then where it really hit me at home is when I visited the old bar, and it was still standing. Now, not all the same people were working there, but a good 40% of them were still there. And that was so fulfilling for me, like, I helped build this. Me. That right there was like, okay, let's do something. And then as soon as we came back, I started applying on Amazon to do Amazon home jobs. And Amazon home jobs was like, yep, you go visit different homes. And one of the, I think it was the second person I visited, I go there, and the job was a 3-hour job, not of me working, of waiting. I had to clone a hard drive to another one. And I'm sitting there waiting, and the guy's name was Steve Kaplan. And he told me, man, your journey seems like mine. I was like, what do you mean? He said, you know, when I was like 30-something years old, I had a beautiful wife, children, beautiful career within construction. Everything was just right there for me. And then one day, my wife and I separated. It's like, oh. When he separated, he lost his kids. They went with her. And he started going through this downward spiral. He immediately lost his job. And after he lost his job, he lost his home. He was stuck. He didn't know what to do. And though he didn't move to China, my TEDx talk is Find Your China, he went to New York City from New Jersey. And he stayed there for about 20 years. In the first 10 years, he was homeless. I was like, what? He's like, yep, homeless. But during his time in New York, he started to draw again, because he remembered as a kid how he liked to draw. And he linked that together with his construction experience and realized that actually I want to be an architect. He said, like you, Markevis, I found my China. He ended up starting his own firm, and now he's like killing it with real estate, killing it. And that, between visiting my old bar, talking to Steve, it encouraged me to say, you know what, we're doing this full time. So I stopped looking for a job, and then I bought our first ambulance. It was a 1986 Ford E350 Baltimore Ravens tailgating ambulance, and it absolutely never worked.
But why the ambulance? What was the purpose?
Because when you think of computer techs, when you think of like the Geek Squad or nerds, you don't see anything cool. You don't see someone with a little swag sometimes. And I wanted to show people from my community that doing a tech-related job can be cool still. Yep. It could be out of the box. When people are going to tell you this will never work, you can make it work. How else can you do it than buy an old ambulance and show people like, nope, this is it.
Absolutely. So the ambulance, you call the motherboard now.
Yes,
so for those who don't know, explain what the motherboard is and why it's a unique idea that you guys came up with.
So the motherboard came about when we were just looking, okay, we want to make our operation mobile. Because at this time, we're living in a 2-bedroom apartment. And customers were always coming into my apartment. And where they're afraid that I'm going to try to do something crazy, I'm afraid that they're going to do something crazy. So I'm like, we need to find a good balance. You know what? Let's just get it out the apartment. Let's make a mobile office. So we bought our first truck and we converted it into a mobile office. We cut out a 42-inch concession window, just like a food truck on the side that opens up. We mounted a 32-inch TV on the side, and we're like, this is it. This is going to be the be-all for everything. And again, it just didn't work because individuals realized that if they can't find the truck, they're going to go somewhere else. Right. So even though it was our first idea, we decided to pivot towards a retail location, but we always held on to that first idea of creating a mobile office, the motherboard.
Right. So now you have the storefront and you've revived the motherboard, and is that active at this point? And
yeah. So we did a year in the apartment. The first truck kept on breaking down like 4 or 5 times before we moved into a smaller storefront. And that storefront, we worked out of there for about 2 years. Our revenue immediately jumped 300% when we went from the apartment to the new, the last storefront, which is literally down the street from here. We worked out of there for 2 years. We purchased the newer ambulance, the newer motherboard, which is still active today. And after running those two for about 2 years, the team began to expand, and now we're in our much larger storefront, which is large today, but according to like our future plans, it's still kind of small.
Of course. Always going to be aiming for higher.
Yes, sir.
So at Howard Tech, you learned the technology skills. In college, you learned a little bit more of the entrepreneurial and the accounting, and then went to China and learned more that you wanted to be an entrepreneur and do your thing. Came back and found your own, got a job and realized that that wasn't for you and you wanted to have that ownership feeling. Yeah. And then you put all that together into your passion with computers for NERDiT NOW. And that all led you up to more recently last year with Shark Tank. And you had that experience and heard the story, but what surprised you the most about that experience of driving across country in an ambulance with your 2 friends to appear on Shark Tank and going through that and pitching your idea?
So what I hate to say is that it's easy. And when I say that, it's like, for me, running 8 miles back in high school was easy. For me, taking apart an iPhone was super easy. But if you gave me like 600-pound weights, that's not easy to me compared to a bodybuilder. But for me, honestly, it was just like, it wasn't that it was easy, but we focused on possibility versus probability. For us, we were like, the moment we said it, everyone was telling us it's a dumb idea, internally, externally, like it didn't seem like a good idea we didn't even have an idea what we were going to pitch.
Sorry, I watched the episode and they liked the idea, but they just said you were a little bit too early to be on Shark Tank. So you didn't get a deal out of it, but you still got a lot of great experience and one hell of a story of driving cross country in an ambulance. Yeah. And became almost minor celebrities in Delaware for appearing on Shark Tank. Right. So a lot of positives coming out of that experience. So what else did you see coming out of from that appearance on Shark Tank?
So again, it just made it more clear for the team to understand that when we focus on possibility, we can make it happen. It doesn't matter what we set our minds on, we're gonna do it. We're entrepreneurs, let's make it happen. And there was like a few moments within the Shark Tank experience, like I recall Mark Cuban looking at me and saying, just like you, I started my first business at 12. Just like you, I opened up a bar. Just like you, I'm in the tech business. Man, we started doing this hoorah type moment. It was just like so cool. Damon John, he's like, I started with this give back to the community aspect. I really wanted to do this. And as an entrepreneur, I agree. As the investor, I don't agree. But they actually didn't have anything negative to say other than the fact that we can do it on our own. So it just confirmed to the team that, no, we're going to do this on our own. So we've come back, we buckled down, and we're still pushing very hard. We've been doing better numbers since Shark Tank, and our confidence has boosted up so much since this experience. It's just been a great opportunity for us to realize how much power we have within ourselves.
Yeah. So I mentioned you're coming up on your 5th year anniversary this fall. So what does the next 5 years of NERDiT Now look like for you?
So I remember my dad telling me as a kid, if you work 5 years like most men won't, you'll live 50 years like most men can't. So I thought, you know, well, what if I work 10 years for my grandkids to live 50 years? Or what if I did like 15 or 20 years so that not only my lineage, but my community can see a life that others couldn't see. We start pondering on this concept as a team, and we realized, like, you know what? We have a lot of great ideas and a lot of good potential right here, right now. So we're looking at a few different ways, like our kiosk model, we're still pushing forward. Our retail location, we're still pushing. But we're also looking at other avenues to expand not only our business, but to make sure that we have a meaningful, intentional impact within our community. We want to not only donate technology, but one shortcoming that Sharks did mention is that we don't have enough workforce. Well, a lot of people in the community keep asking, can we get trained here at NERDiT Now? We're like, oh, you know what? We're going to listen to the Sharks and we're going to listen to the community, and we're going to create a workforce development program to teach individuals to not only get employable skills with NERDiT Now or without, but to become social good entrepreneurs. Our goal is to find individuals and communities to be able to uptrain them to a point where they can say, hey, not only did I gain a skill, but I now have a system backing me to run my own ambulance that's going to service 5, 10 kiosks, to one day aspire to open up my own retail location, to be able to manage a district, whether it's here in Delaware or taking this company nationwide. For when we look at Geek Squad, we're like, yeah, they did a very good job with their brand, but they partnered with another organization which kind of swallowed them as a whole.
Right.
We don't necessarily need that. We can do it from their roots, and we can build. We're going to continue building. We currently have a space that has been brought to us. It was introduced to us through Renata over at Wilmington Alliance. And she said, hey, I have a friend over at Colonial Parking, Jed Hatfield. We got 10,000 square feet. It's yours. Use it so that you can help further your mission for the next few months. Okay.
Wow.
Okay. So that's where we're at today. We have much higher, larger aspirations to one day purchasing our own building, if not that building, and building a workforce development by taking a lot of the recycled equipment here in the state of Delaware. And instead of sending it to other states, we've taken it internally, repurpose it, donate it back to the community. You sell a small fraction of it to keep everything sustainable,
Right.
but let's close that digital divide for our communities.
Right. And you've talked about closing the digital divide and how getting that divide closed for yourself is what got you started when you were 12. So how is NERDiT Now working now to close that digital divide in Delaware?
So right now people look at us and say, oh, you're just doing it because of Corona. And we're like, well, no. Prior to Corona, we've donated over 500 computers. But since Corona, we've done over 300, maybe 400 computers now.
Wow.
You're like, oh, whoa. Things have intensified here at NERDiT Now, for we're making sure that everyone gets a computer that's within like our reach. Like if we can afford to do it, we're gonna make it happen. And we came up with this very ambitious goal. And this team, even myself, we all cringe a little bit when I say this. I'm like, 20,000 laptops by the end of 2020. 20,000 laptops for 2020. Yep, let's make it happen. I don't know how it's going to happen yet, but the entrepreneurs in us are going to make sure it happen. We're sourcing different Chromebooks and laptops, desktops from around the country right now. Have them filled in here. We're working with other technology partners such as Tech Impact, Zip Code Delaware. How can we make this thing really happen so that we can purchase broken devices, repair them, and infuse our communities with technology to close that digital divide.
Awesome. And you mentioned you've been doing this before COVID-19 shut everything down, but why is it more important now with the shutdown with COVID?
I won't say it's more important, to completely honest.
Okay.
It's always been important.
Right.
But it took a pandemic for people to realize how important it is.
So it's not that the issue wasn't there before, it's just it brought it to the surface with these kids being at home, and now they can't do their homework, they can't finish their classes, and potentially can't graduate.
Correct.
So working to close that has been not necessarily more important, but far more obvious now with the shutdown with COVID-19.
Correct.
And 20,000 is a very ambitious goal, but it's not necessarily about whether you make that goal, but about achieving to get as close to that goal as you possibly can.
So since we started to speak to the community, we said, hey, stop living out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
God's put us on this world to not live out of fear. Live your life, but be cautious. Take your precautions, stay a little distant, but continue doing what you're doing that God put you on this earth to do. And that's what we're going to continue doing. And as I did that post, I remember doing a small little plug for NERDiT Now and saying, hey, if you got to work from home, remember, we got monitors. I'll give you some. I'll give you a computer. If you need to work from home or do schoolwork, we'll help you. And then immediately after, Discover Bank says, hey, Markevis, you know we've been working with you for 3 years. I'm like, yeah, I Discover, Amy, Jim, I love y'all. They're like, here's $75,000 to work with Dana.
Wow.
Dana Philanthropy Delaware, let's make sure that our nonprofits have technology. I'm like, huh? Really? Mm-hmm. They're like, yeah, let's do it. And then if you have some overflow, make sure you start infusing technology for your mission, the students. And we're like, hot dog. I say hot dog. My son listens to Mickey Mouse, hot diggity dog. But they said, just go ahead. And we have a very close partnership with Discover Bank, and they've been great supporters with us for the past 3 years. And then immediately after, it was just like this snowball effect. Then we're like, Capital One said, hey, we have these students that need technology as well, and we want to help you. Here's another $20,000. Jen Walter Michaels, thank you. This is a blessing for us. We're putting the technology in the hands of the kids who really couldn't afford it otherwise. We have other financial institutions who are giving commitments I can't really mention just yet, for it's not like hammered down.
That's all right.
But through our partnerships with Social Contract, Wilmington Alliance, the King Creative, the Influencers Labs, like we are collectively coming together to make an impact for our community. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. And of course, we still have the internet portion where we have internet service providers such as Comcast and Wi-Fi that's going to help us within different regions throughout the state, if not the country, to close that digital divide.
Amazing. All right, for everyone who's just tuning in, we're going to be doing a Q&A in just a few minutes. So if you have any questions, please put them in the comments of the live stream. We'll be getting to those in just a moment. I've just got a few more questions for Markevis. So you talked about, closing the digital divide and the partners and King Creative and the amazing sponsorship from Discover and others. So how do you really expand that beyond? Like, how do you do that nationally? What's your goal?
So nationally, we actually just got off the phone call earlier this morning with a large organization. It's called the National Christianity Foundation. And they work with a whole bunch of different certified recyclers across the country that donate technology back into communities. And they said, hey, we see what you're doing. Let's partner. We're like, hot dog, let's do it. We, through Wilmington Alliance, we got another beautiful referral with Generations. And an individual, he says, hey, like, I think there's some synergy here to provide technology across different regions in the country. Let's make it happen. We don't care where you are, because I realized that though Delaware is a small state and I grew up in a very small community that was underserved, these communities are across the country. So how do we look at these communities and say, hey, we're going to pour resources to you as well? Just last week, we donated 100 Chromebooks to Philadelphia. We went to a school, and they're doing a lot of great work. And we're saying, okay, 1099C and the West Corridor District, collectively, we said, all right, we're going to take a third of the price of the Chromebooks, and each person, we're going to collectively come and provide 100 laptops out there.
Amazing.
We're like, boom, this is how it's going to happen. We don't have to stand on one person's shoulders. Collectively, when we come together, we're not trying to make money right now. We want to make sure that we're closing that digital divide.
Amazing. So if you had a single piece of advice for any young entrepreneurs or future entrepreneurs out there, what would it be?
Do not let people impose their limitations onto you. And that limitation may come out of love or hate. You Aussie, you'll never make it to America. Hate. Are you sure you want to go to America? You have no family there. How are you going to sustain yourself? What kind of job are you going to get if you can't get a visa? That's love. But guess what? Both of the two is a limitation imposed onto you. So that's when I need you to stand up and put on your Superman cape. My Chinese name was Chaoren, which means Superman. But you put on your Superman cape and say, I am not going to let you impose your limitation onto me, whether it's love or hate. The hate, it's easy. You just can't do it. You hating on me. The love is a little bit more difficult. And I could just remember, like if my wife would have told me in the beginning, Markevis, are you sure you want to quit your job? That would have made it so much more difficult. I had other loved ones tell me this, but I had her love with me to support me through this. Don't let people impose the limitations onto you, and you're going to see things happen. See things happen. And don't try to just go for what you think is attainable. Go for what's possible. I said in 2 years, I want our revenue for NERDiT NOW to be $10,000 a month. It took me almost 17 months to get there. But the moment I got there, I was like, wait, no, I can do this. And then we start increasing that number ridiculous because we didn't focus on like the limitations imposed onto us. We focused on the possibility versus probability by not letting people limit their limitations onto us.
Amazing. You've got an incredible story and just all the different components coming together to what your passion is, which is NERDiT NOW. And everyone, thank you for tuning in. We're going to be getting to that Q&A in just a moment. Just want to quickly thank our sponsors, the Delaware Prosperity Partnership, Small Business Development Center, and the Delaware Division of Small Business. They make this possible and give us the opportunity to give founders like Markevis the platform to share their story and what they can share for future and current entrepreneurs.